It's a wonderful, very delicate fragrance. Hello, have you ever bought an expensive bottle of wine and thought, this is blah? It doesn't rise up to the price itself. Well, watch this episode and you will understand what has happened to your bottle of wine. Welcome to the North Face of wine. So you will see the hardship, the really physical work that is required in a vineyard. Now, it's not every day, I understand, but truly, to go up and down those rows is really physically challenging. In this episode, we also see, we begin to answer the question of what happens when you were disappointed, when you bought that bottle of wine, that expensive bottle of wine you thought would enliven your senses, and it didn't happen. We will begin to see what happened to and why. We should go to different parcels, and it will become crystal clear. And in the end, you will see what I am going to do in this parcel, which I think is at the scientific forefront of what is being done, what the research is leading us to in terms of viticulture. This is not just a garden. We really have a vineyard here, and what I'm going to do with it in order to restore it to really, so that the wine can itself has this titillating aspect, this romantic affair. A wine, a glass of wine, when you're happy, you're just happy to be with someone and to share this Latin quality so precious, I think, to the entire world. This is exhausting work. It really is. I've been going at it for 3 weeks. I'm not in the vineyard every day, but I thought this process was going to be shorter than pruning, which took me a month. In January, December, January. I really thought this was going to be a bit shorter, but there's so much care. There's so much care, plus I'm doing some miscellaneous things such as putting rocks on the side that I want to get rid of. But why do we do this? Now, laying her down, as I mentioned a couple of episodes ago, the reason, if we let this grow up, as I mentioned, vines are a acrotone plant where the sap is going to go only to the top bud or the top two buds. And so if it's left up, it's just going to stay there. It's not going to fill in all the other buds. You remember in the very first episode, we counted how many buds I was trimming. If we let it up, it's only going to reach the top, and there's going to be very, very few grapes, a couple of grapes possibly. Here we're looking at about 8 to 10 grapes on per vine. So that's the reason why we have to lay it down in order to have sap all over this stem and have greater yield. Well, it's really not possible. Further down, I left 2 vines standing up, if you will. And we'll see in subsequent episode. Probably we'll check up on them in June. We'll check up on them in, before harvest and see what really happened to those two. And but really, for a few days, I've been really physically, it's not that difficult. I mean, I'm not running up and down the mountain, but the terrain is very steep. My ankles have been hurting. I mentioned to Denis, who's doing the video work, I mean, 2 days ago, I got up 10 o'clock in the morning. It was so, I had backache, leg aches everywhere. And we also bringing this vineyard back to a way that is that's going to make a difference in the glass of wine itself, and that's going to be the subject of great information and what great wine in the end of what we're going to do, which is going to be, again, vive la différence, different from everywhere else I can see so far, not only in this vineyard, in this village, in this region, but also different from other regions of France, what we're going to do with this vineyard, with this parcel, so that we have a wine that is radically different. We are going to restore fungal matter, just to give you a little bit of a teaser. Here we have an example of a traditional, old-style ground tending. As you can see, it's totally bare. The ground was meant as a support only. That is the old way of thinking. They thought that the ground was there for water, maybe some nutrients. It was called terroir, this big word which we're going to talk about later on in this episode. And mainly, the vines were the stars. But the relationship between the vine and the ground, and then the nutrients from the ground, all of this was totally forgotten. And then the bouquet in a wine that is rich is completely forgotten. And that's why we can answer the question I asked at the beginning. Have you ever bought a bottle of wine, a very expensive bottle of wine, that left you really flat? This is why, because you lost the relationship. It became essentially a chemical plant. And, man is always here to solve a problem. And so then they used artificial yeast, chemical yeast, in order to bring up the so-called terroir, but it all fell flat eventually. The complexity is absolutely not in parcels like this, and this is the result of your disappointment. That is something we will do completely differently in the parcel we talk about all the time. So here we are, literally, what is it, 3 feet away from what I would call total soil desolation, to the beginning of a new way of thinking. First of all, the parcel before any kind of heat wave, it will suffer dramatically, especially with the rocks that retain the heat. So here we have the beginning of a thought whereby we no longer plow, we no longer put any chemicals whatsoever in the soil, because people are asking for that too. So there's this struggle, and what do we do? And so here in this parcel, the intent is to let grass grow just wild. Now, this winemaker is only starting, because if we see a little further up, there's very little ground cover here. But that's the idea. And plus we figured out that with a grass cover, the temperature of the soil itself in the summer, as we are on the southern exposure, flank of the mountain and southern exposure, a thick grass cover will lower the temperature by 5 to 10 degrees centigrade. And that's a huge amount in order to retain water. But the challenge is now this grass is also going to use water for, for its own survival. It's a bit of a struggle. We'll solve all of that in our parcel. Here, as you can see, only a few feet away, we have another way of thinking, which we have approached in previous episodes, but now it's full bloom. We have rapeseed. We have these beautiful flowers, frankly, I have no idea what they are. But this is an interseason. It's in between the rows. It is meant to be green, what we call green fertilizer. Further in about a month or so, it's going to grow very fast. It's chosen for its rapidity of growth. And what will happen is they will come with a machine and literally mow all this matter, because we figured out that to restore the nutrient base on a year-to-year basis, we need about 10 tons of green matter. So this is a beautiful example of trying to restore that. But again, in our parcel, we'll do something a little bit different, more sustainable, because, for example, this was never in the vineyards before, but of course it spread seeds. So now there's a little bit of infestation of this stuff which we have to get rid of. In our parcel, it's I don't know why, but this is about 6 feet tall at this moment. I'm gonna have to get rid of it all. It's good, it's fine, it's green matter, no problem. It will rot, it will do good for the vineyard. But ultimately, that's not what I want to do. What I want to do is recreate a forest environment, which we're going to talk about in a few minutes. In anticipation to what I was going to do, what I was thinking back in November and December, what to do in this vineyard in order to restore, I called it its grandeur, in order to restore the terroir, and in order to be scientifically, perhaps ahead, maybe not ahead of everyone, but in the forefront of scientific agricultural research that is moving away from synthetic products. Here's a little experiment. I have a huge linden tree in front of the house, and what I decided to do is to put all the leaves, gather all the leaves, and create not so much humus, but a little bit, in order to restore, see if earthworms were coming, because that's going to be part of the bioculture inside the soil. We're going to talk much about this, because this is really where your glass of wine begins. It begins, yes, in the vines and all, but it really begins in the ground. And in the ground used to be only a support. Nothing was thought of the ground, at least in the last 100 years. But let's see if we find earthworm. I saw some. I don't know if they're gone or they've gone deeper, but let's see what we see. Because I believe we should, I'm not sure if we can pick up, but this this white stuff here. This is fungal. That's exactly what we want. The deeper we go, the more white stuff. That's fungal matter. That's exactly what we want. That is what is missing in all the vineyards. And let's see if we have worms. We're going to talk a lot about the biology of the ground in very simple terms. In this episode, they were here a few minutes ago. They're gone, but that's the great thing about it, because that is great. That is what is missing in all the wines. That's why the very first question at the opening of this episode, the very first question I ask, it relates directly to what we can find in here. They're gone. They're smart. It's no big deal. Because here, I can assure you, there were no worms last year or for several years. Ain't no doubt about it. No worms. Well, uh, we have micro roots here. Ah, and we have a friend. Finally. Look at this as well. We have the white matter. We have also black matter. This is decaying matter. And as this is decaying, it will develop into fungal matter as well. It will also release its nutrients. So it's not only nutrients. That is what's it's so important to understand in these discoveries we're making now. And take a look, it's all wet. It retains moisture extremely well. It actually, with the fungal matter is itself an extension of the plant. It's really important also to understand that, because the plant can only dig roots so far. And it's the fungal matter that is going to bring water from deeper and to the surface, to the plant. Look how this is all wet. It's absolutely wonderful. I almost say that we talk about heat waves, having more heat waves and climate change and all that. That's just a fact. So let's deal with the facts. And the issue here is not so much that this is going to be radical. It's not so much that we don't have enough water. But we can challenge ourselves really to understand our environment. There's a challenge for us as humans to understand our environment and how to, the more we understand it, the more we see that there are possibilities. Climate change is not the end of the world, okay? There are possibilities. There is water further down, water that we don't even see. It's almost, I would say, microscopic. They're not aquifers, but there is water further down that plants can use if we treat the soil as a living environment itself and not as just a support like we have been for the last 100 years. This soil here, I'm going to show you in a minute that this soil was not black like that just even a few months ago. This happened because I had a small mountain of leaves and twigs. I wanted to do this experiment for the vineyard, see how quickly we can turn things around. Because, I mean, if 10 years later, it's not going to be that great. And this is a good sign that things can be turned around very quickly. We're going to do a quick experiment with our finest moutarde de Dijon mustard. And we're going to see, we're going to put a tablespoon worth of mustard you grab at the supermarket here. I put some water in it because it's the bottom of the jar. And here we go. Water and mustard. That's going to give us, let's say, an abrasive solution. There we go. Up. This is going to tell us how much worm activity there is in this soil. Now, this is just in front of my house. It's about 20 yards away from the vineyard. I don't expect much here. You will see in a few minutes that I started an experiment back in November. But here we're just, say, a foot away, and this is it. This is all I need to do. So, the simplest of all experiments. A little mustard, and we'll come back in about half an hour, and we'll dig a little bit to see if there are any worms. I doubt it very much, but listen, this is YouTube. It's all live in many ways. Here we are, well over half an hour, about 45 minutes after we poured this solution of Dijon mustard and water. No earthworms were killed for this sequence here. Trust me. I found my little piochon as when I was a kid. When I was a kid, I had a few rows. I wanted to make money. I was 11 years old. I wanted to make money, so I bought myself this little thing with my pocket money. Little piochon is called in French. And I planted green peas. Those were my favorite. So they were my favorite. I figured everybody loved them. So I planted a few rows of green peas and I sold them to the grocery store. I did that for a few years. I would alternate green peas and string beans. So, but here, we're right next to where we were digging. There's nothing here. Like there's a little moss. Hey, it's dry. We don't have the moisture. You see, it's already dry. There's nothing to this. And so just in a few months, we were able to make a slight difference. There's nothing here. There's no worms here. The vineyard will have worms by the millions. The vineyard will reconnect to this earthly mycelial network that is literally the internet for the earth itself. Reconnect to that. We're going to see what I'm going to do in the vineyard right now. So I am here in the parcel, and we're going to begin to explain what it is that I'm going to do after the couple of experiments we saw. But first, I want to show you why we lay her down. We lay her down because vines are an acrotone plant. They grow from the top. See, a tree is a triangle, small at the top. A vine is essentially the opposite. You can see a perfect example here here we have leaves coming out of the bud. And as we go down, the leaves are a little smaller and smaller, a little smaller and smaller again, up until not even developed. This is a perfect example of acrotone plant. The other one is the same. It's not totally uniform. It just happened to near right here. But I thought it'd be interesting to show you. Now, what are we going to do in the soil here? For the soil, for the terroir, to restore the terroir in this parcel, is I'm going to buy about 60 tons in all, 60 tons of wood scrap, copeaux we call them, wood scrap, yeah, I have to remember the name in English, which I'm going to build right under, at first, right under the vines, just to economize on the amount and the work. I'm going to build up about 4 or 5 feet of wood scrap all along in order to begin to recreate at least a semblance of a forest where this is going to keep the moisture, where the mycelium network is going to reconstruct, where earthworms will come back from I don't know where. Frankly, we have no idea where these things come from. But it's a vast network. We have an entire mountain. Why not there? And why not reconnect? Literally, the way I see it is a reconnection to universal intelligence, whatever that may be. And so this network will feed straight into your glass. That is really what we're doing this for. Straight into your glass, because the complexity of fungal matter, the complexity of enzymes, the complexity of returning this soil into a terroir that is dignified enough to have vines and create wine. It is absolutely crucial to me to sustain the heat waves of climate change and at the same time restore an intelligence and a great tasting wine that will titillate your senses, that will maybe even spark that romantic affair that you are involved with or that you are seeking. Thank you very much for watching the North Face of Wine. I appreciate deeply. Don't forget to subscribe, it would be very much appreciated. I hope you appreciate also the hard work and the thinking that goes into this vineyard. I'll see you next week where we go back to purchase possibly a wine press and various other equipment, and we'll go back also in the vineyard to go a little bit deeper into what it is that I'm going to do. That is really at the scientific forefront. We want to keep that. We want to keep that research because we do have climate change and we should know what is happening. We have made great strides. Let's not stop. That said, don't forget, in vines we trust.